Kendall and Rachel, thanks for being with us today. Kendall, I want to start with you, the feeling on the start line here. Obviously, this is a special race to you, one of the biggest races of the year on the American racing calendar. What's that feeling like lining up on the start line, especially after winning on Saturday and lining up as the champion here on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, winning the day before, I was pretty excited to give it a go the second day. And yeah, big crowds always. And yeah, it's always exciting to get on a start line. So I was pretty anxious to race.
What are the start mornings like for you, the morning before a big race like this? What's typically for breakfast? Is it a big meal or something lighter?
Yeah, I'm pretty consistent with my breakfast. I'll just eat eggs and toast, or a bagel or something like that. I'm pretty simple. And yeah, definitely coffee and and I think a lot of crits, like I don't really like to warm up before the race, so I'll do like a spin in the morning before an afternoon race. So no more than an hour. Just spin the legs out really easy. Ride the coffee with teammates. Ride back. But that's pretty much how my morning goes, and then. Yeah, definitely have a pre-race coffee and then super jittery on the line, ready to go.
So we just saw the start here earlier. Is there a sense of calm that comes over once the race finally starts? What's the feeling like when you guys finally get to roll off the line?
Yeah, I mean, crits are pretty punchy at the beginning, so they always start off fast. They typically string out for the first, lap or two or maybe more. And that's fine with me because I'm already like pretty revved up from coffee. But I typically I don't like to warm up, and everyone just thinks that's absolutely crazy. But I don't know. I guess I kind of use the beginning of the race as a warm up, if that makes any sense. I mean, Rachel knows that's how she used to operate as well. So yeah, I don't know. That's just how my sprinter legs like to work. So.
Rachel, is it different for you as a director, the feeling of nerves on a big race day? How did that change for you?
No, I think there's a lot of similarities. I mean, there's probably a little bit more just busyness for me in the hour or so before the race, just picking up numbers and having the team meeting and just making sure everybody's dialed and ready. But it's the same kind of I guess nerves and anxiousness just waiting for the race to get started. Once they're off the line, then for me things kind of calm a little bit. It's like, okay, now they're racing. I've done a lot of my job, of what I can do, and now it's over to the riders.
I want to talk about the tactics at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic this year. Obviously, Kendall had a big target on her back going into Sunday's race at the Clarendon Cup. As a director, how do you deal with that, and how do you use the Tibco teammates to try to help Kendall?
I mean, I think it's like going into every race. We rather than focus on the opportunity to make history and be the only person that had won both races, we take it as a normal race and try and put that aside until after the race and let the riders just focus on the race itself. It was, obviously Kendall did have a big target on her back, but she does in most crits, obviously being the sprinter that she is. So that was no different to usual. There were some really strong teams we were up against. So it was a case of having a very simple but direct plan going into it, where each rider knew what they had to do during the race, and each rider went into it knowing their role.
Kendall, I assume your role was pretty simple, try to win, but obviously the goal for Tibco on this day was to try to keep the race together so that you could sprint. Were you ever nervous in these early moves? We're looking at the 34 laps to go right now in a 50-lap race. In the first 20 laps of racing, do you ever worry about the breakaways that try to go away early?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that's going through my head, and just marking the right riders that I think are an imminent threat. And just being able to share the work with my teammates. I could see that the Charlotte was a little bit far back, so I think I reacted to move pretty early on. But yeah, I mean, I had pretty good legs. I was confident that like I could cover the move and just roll onto the move and not have to do, spend too many matches. And I was feeling really good. And yeah, I think we all react to the heat pretty well too. So a lot of us we race really well in the heat and handle it pretty well. So I think it was like 90 degrees already. And well, I don't even know what time. I think it was like 10 or 11 in the morning. Yeah, we had just got coffee, rolled to the race, and it was already 90 degrees. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a hot one. Put a little ice sock in the back and let's go. So
this is definitely a race of attrition with the heat and the length too. It's a relatively long criterion by American standards. One of the hardest races of the year.
Yeah, I would say just with the heat and, countless attacks. Yeah, I think I lost track how many times we just were accelerating out of every corner. It was full gas the whole time. Yeah, and also this course is
one team
as well. Sorry, what's that?
There was one team in particular that made your life really difficult on this day, and that was the Hagens-Berman Supermint team. You were talking about trying to control the race. The team with the sort of blue shoulders, they have a light blue on their right shoulder and a dark blue on the left shoulder. This was the team that had to get away because they didn't want to sprint against you at the Clarendon Cup. So I imagine this team caused some troubles for you at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic.
Oh yeah, I mean that's kind of their style anyway. They go the whole race. Whatever race they show up to, they're always attacking. So yeah, I mean they were pretty relentless. They threw the kitchen sink at us, and yeah, I mean like I said, we had 4 people or something like that, and yeah, so we were definitely undergunned, and they had a full squad. So it was pretty hard to keep up with the fireworks, but yeah, we managed pretty well, I thought.
Rachel, right here at 23 laps to go, we see them attacking again. This was pretty much every lap they would put a rider on the front. What were you telling your Tibco riders when these attacks would go away? And did you know that this was coming before you went into the start?
Yeah, I mean, as Kendall has just said, that Hagens-Berman are very aggressive in every race they go to. So we knew to expect that. It doesn't necessarily make it easier that you expect it, but we had to be a little bit smart and use teams like Fearless Femme. They were also being aggressive. So to some extent, we were watching and if there was a Fearless Femme and a Hagens-Berman together and a Fast Chance all off the front, then we had to be in there. If not, we could maybe pause a little bit and see if one of those teams would help bring it back if it was just one or two of the others. But we had to be attentive and up the front, the whole time, making sure that nothing got away that was going to be a threat without us.
Kendall, we're seeing another rider right now that caused a lot of problems for you. Katie Compton was a major player in this race. Obviously, an incredibly strong solo rider. She was riding on that Fearless Femme team. How many times did you see Katie Compton on the front and think this is about to get really, really hard? That must have been a nightmare having her up there.
Yeah, I mean, Katie's a legend. So I was definitely concerned that she would get off the front in a move. And I mean, she's a cyclocross badass. So it's whenever she goes, it's like, you got to mark that move. You can't let her get away. And she was definitely aggressive. And I mean, she's a cyclocross racer. She can just go for an hour and a half, just full gas. So that was definitely one of the key riders we were watching. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, she's just lighting it up. But yeah, I was definitely concerned about her. I was concerned about, a good sized group like this one getting off the front. And I mean, lucky for us, we had other teams pretty much doing the work for us, and chasing things down and closing gaps. So that kind of worked to our benefit, that everyone was also like, oh, I want to be up there. So Yeah.
A breakaway on this course for the country's best sprinter at the time is probably your worst nightmare, to see these riders going away. So you're trying to keep this race together, but pretty much everybody else in the race is trying to get a breakaway going because they don't want to sprint against you at the finish. Is there a sense of me versus the world in a race like this? Do you start to feel frustrated at a point like 13 laps to go here?
I definitely wasn't too alarmed at this point. I mean, I was up in that front group too with my teammate Charlotte. So yeah, I mean, there was just kind of a split. It wasn't really like a breakaway, I'd say. But yeah, I mean, we just kind of just had to keep our heads level about it. Like, don't freak out in a moment when it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm on a wheel. I'm in the draft. I'm not, having to really chase something down or spend a lot of matches. So I was still conserving energy versus everyone else in front of me. So, but yeah, I mean, it does feel like that sometimes when I show up to crits, just because that is my forte as a sprinter. Crits. I mean, I love crit racing. Grew up racing crits. So yeah, I would say every time I show up to a crit, it's like, she's here. So we got to mark her. We got to make a plan against her. But yeah, that's typically how I feel for sure. But I definitely have confidence in myself when I show up to a crit and yeah, know how to get it done.
So now we're seeing the formation of the last real big attack or separation of the day. This was Rachel Langdon, who went away solo for the Fast Chance Pro Cycling team. This was an impressive move, Rachel. I was really impressed to see a solo rider this late in the race get away. On a course like this, to be able to get space like this at 12 laps to go, you had to be impressed with this ride.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there are some riders, someone like Katie Compton, who you might expect this from, but Rachel maybe a little more unknown. So for her to be able to get off the front and get and keep for a while that kind of gap was a really impressive ride.
Kendall,
yeah, I would say she timed that move really well. I mean, because it was kind of at a point where everyone was on the gas, and then there was that moment where everyone was like, "Whew, I'm gonna breathe now," and then she went, and that was a really, really well timed move. She read that race really well for that kind of move. It would have probably been a really dangerous move if she had 2 or 3 people helping her.
Your role here is to just stay calm, Kendall. Is it tough to try to sit back and conserve your energy here at 11 laps to go, knowing that you want to go get a rider like Rachel Langdon?
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely thinking about it. But I mean, I had Charlotte there still, and she was riding so well. And she was keeping everything together, marking everything. Yeah, I mean, all I had to do was drift from wheel to wheel. I didn't really have to put any energy or thought into like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to close this gap. I had full confidence that if it came down to it, she could close it. And yeah, so I had full confidence in her ability that day. So definitely nice to have really strong teammates.
Rachel, the other thing I notice here at 10 laps to go, this field is really, really small, significantly smaller than the field that started the race. At this point, the team's pretty tired. I mean, what do you do now that most of the Tibco riders have pretty much burned through their energy reserves supporting Kendall?
I mean, this is when, Kendall has to use her smarts and her experience to know when she needs to take things on for herself. At this point in the race, 10 laps to go, everybody's getting tired. Charlotte had done an amazing job covering, I don't know, hundreds of moves, it seemed like. Hagens Berman still had some riders here and was still kind of leading the chase. And there is where we have to be smart and not use our matches until we really have to. So if another team like Hagens is chasing, then we have to allow them to do that, but make sure that they don't get off the front without us. That's when it starts becoming really dangerous, if suddenly we're left isolated with several teams up the road and we really are the only ones to chase. So I think as long as we're making sure that there's other teams there that still want to chase, then we just have to be with them and see as much as possible if we can get them to do the work for us and just stay calm. Staying calm, I think, at this point in the race with a rider off the front is one of the hardest things to do, and where Kendall's and Charlotte's experience really comes in.
This is another really beautiful thing about the sport of cycling, how quickly the alliances changed. We were talking earlier about Hagens Berman, Supermint. You guys were going head to head for the entire race. But now with Rachel Langdon off the front, you kind of have the same goal and you start working together,
Yeah.
although you guys did a good job of letting the other teams do most of the work. Kendall, is that ever weird out there, having riders that you are just battling against and then it kind of changes and you're riding next to them saying, oh, let's work together now?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a funny thing with cycling is things are constantly changing. You just have to learn to adapt to the situation. And yeah, you have frenemies. So yeah, sometimes one moment you're on the same, same thought process, and the next moment they're like, actually, no, we're gonna go do this. Bye. Yeah, it gets pretty complicated. So that's where I would say like learning to read a race and having experience really, like Rachel said, comes into play. Yeah, it's for me, I can read a crit pretty well, and I can assess the situation like, okay, well this combination's up the road, well these people are still back in the field, okay, I don't need to do this work, that's their job. But sometimes you can't count on them because maybe they're not riding well that day, maybe they're not thinking the same way you are. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of all about having good timing.
So this is really the perfect scenario for you happening right here. Hagens Berman Superman is chasing Rachel Langdon down, doing the work. You have Charlotte Lucas up there. But then we start to see you move up towards the final few laps. And then at 2 laps to go, it's all together. You got to be thinking here, this is your ideal scenario.
Yeah, it was a really good situation, 2 to go. It's, pretty much all together. And I was just letting all the sprinters kind of jockey for position in front of me and trying to stay safe and take good lines. I was a little bit too far back, but I was like, okay, well, I can move up pretty much every corner position at least. So I just started focusing on that. And yeah, I mean, Charlotte was blown, so I had to focus on just being in a good position and taking the line that I wanted. And yeah.
Now, this race was won and lost on the final corner. No question about it. You move up from 7th
Absolutely.
place up to the front. Were you testing how much you could push the limits of this corner right here?
Yeah, I think a couple times I really railed it, but I'll do that sometimes just to see how it feels and just to test the line. But I've done this race so many times that yeah, I really know the course well. I really know the limits of my bike, and so I knew that I could push it if I needed to. So yeah, they were really fighting me for position. You can just see coming into the first corner, everyone's just drag racing. But yeah, I was definitely being challenged every corner. So I just had to, let instinct take over, I guess.
There's always a fight in the run-up to the sprint to be behind the best riders because everybody wants the draft of the fastest rider. Are you aware of that happening behind you? And who are you trying to follow with no teammates?
I wasn't really aware of anyone marking me, but I was definitely aware of who was in front of me. And yeah, I know Valentina Scandalar was riding really well. I was like, okay, this is a good wheel to come off of. She's pretty punchy. Sam Schneider's up there. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty confident that if any of these girls went, I could come off that wheel and slingshot around them.
So but, this is it.
Hagens, yeah.
And you see, takes the inside line right up the middle. Now, some riders crashed on the outside, but you were safe because you took the farthest inside line possible. And then at 200 meters, that's really your sweet spot for sprinting.
Yeah,
so this one went perfect for you.
Inside line. Yeah, and then I just hit the turbos and voila.
All right, so I want to go back and look at that corner. First off, moving from 7th place up to 1st place in one corner. The race really started in the last 2 corners because you made significant moves in the last 2 corners. But take me through the thinking here when you see this inside line. Do you know you have it as soon as you enter the apex? I mean, do you know that you're going to be able to clean this line?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, this is a whole shot, and then I just stood out of the corner. But yeah, everyone was taking that corner pretty wide, so I just snuck underneath, and yeah, I mean, it's really a shame that she went down in that corner. But yeah, I mean, we're taking it pretty hot, and everyone's on edge, and everyone's, you know, heart's in their throat. So it's yeah, I guess I just had to take my chance. But yeah, it's kind of what you do in bike racing, take chances, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Tell me about that feeling when you finally round the turn and you see open road ahead of you, and you know you've got the line, you know you've made the move, you're exactly where you want to be, and now you just let your natural talent take over. When do you know you have a sprint like this? I mean, is it all the way to the line, or can you tell a few meters out that you might have this?
I think when I was passing the wheel pit and Rachel was there screaming like, ah! like all crazy, I was like, oh, I got it, you know. And then I look over my shoulder and I saw daylight. So that was pretty cool.
Rachel, for you as a director, there's not much that you can do in the last lap. I mean, the plan has been executed. It's just up to the riders. What's that like, waiting on the finish line, watching that last turn to see the riders come around?
I mean, the last few laps is the most nervous I ever am in a race, especially in a race like this when you know that you've got a rider who really is a favorite for the win. So yeah, I mean, it's all about watching that last corner and seeing where the rider comes out of that final corner. So yeah, it's definitely a nerve-wracking few minutes.
Well, you guys got to experience that twice in the weekend, as this was Kendall's second win of the weekend at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. This cup is an interesting story too, Kendall. We have there's a traveling cup for the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, and I understand your cup is proudly displayed in your living room at home.
Yep, in my living room at home, and also the Crystal City Cup as well. So yeah, I got those two displayed. They're good memories and fun races.
Do you ever drink out of the cup at home? Because I have to say, I think we had one of our best podium celebrations here after the Omnium presentation, where you put your champagne in the winner's cup.
Yeah, I kind of messed up actually, because I put it in the traveling cup, so I got that one all sticky and dirty for Mr. Leyburn, sorry. But yeah, I don't drink out of them now. They're proudly displayed and clean. No sticky alcohol.
Well, when you're the winner, anything goes. Kendall, will you be back to the Armed Forces Cycling Classic to defend your cup win and maybe get another one of those slick jerseys?
Absolutely, yeah. That's right.
Well,
Absolutely.
Kendall and Rachel, thank you so much for taking time with us today for the Armed Forces Cycling Classic rewatch on the Monumental Sports Network. Congratulations once again, Kendall. I'm sorry that we won't see you out there this year, but can't wait to see you out there in 2021.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad.